Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Tent of Abraham. I'm Tamir Kreisman from Israel, and this is Parashat Shoftim, Judges. We found in Deuteronomy 16:18 to 21:9, and this one is called Try Again. Now, before we begin, obviously, I would like to address the video that I posted yesterday. That's thanks to you guys, over 1,000 subscribers. I do hope that you enjoyed the tiny little snippets in the preview of what would be waiting for you in Jerusalem. In fact, at this very moment, while this recording is taking place, my brother is taking some of the Tent of Abraham members on a tour of Jerusalem and the city of David in the Old City. And he's got this whole thing planned for them. In any case, it's phenomenal. It's fantastic. If you have any questions, you know how to reach me and you know how to reach him. I hope to see you all here in the land of Israel. So without further ado, let's get into it. Last week, I asked you guys a question. I finished the teaching with a question, right? Now, I asked it because I need you to give me the answers, but these are your answers. In other words, this isn't for me, this is for yourselves. The answer that you give will be very indicative as to where you stand. Now, again, this is not for me, this is for all of you personally. This is between you and God. We are now in the month of Elul, the month of forgiveness and mercy. Chodesh HaSlichot VaRachamim. These are extremely high times. Now, not only during this month, but as far as our entire timeline, I'm talking about from creation, as far as our entire timeline goes, things are happening, things are changing, things are moving forward at a rapid pace. You have no idea. So you have to ask yourself the question, Eicha, where are you? In order for you to know how to proceed, you first need to know where you stand. And in order for you to know where you stand, you have to take a good, hard look at yourself. And that's what this month is for. Din v'cheshbon, accountability and judgment. Now, before God judges all of his creation on Rosh Hashanah, he gave us this time right now, this month, to judge ourselves before we come before him. We got to clean our house, right? Introspection, reflection, accountability, and responsibility should be our focus, and in that order, no less. Introspection, reflection, look inside, reflection, what do you see? Whatever you see, you have to give an account for that. And then you have to take responsibility for it by rectifying everything that is not on the up and up. Now, I didn't officially give any homework, but the question I asked last week, it was real. So when you look at me, what do you see? Now, me meaning Moses, I hope you all understood that. Don't look at me or take any kind of example from me. These are Moses' words. So please, even if you just pause the video for a couple of minutes right now and ask yourself this question, even if you're in a group, stop for 1 second, ask yourself the question so we can properly move forward. Now, there's a method to all this madness, and it's being given to me as we go along. I have no idea what's next. I only know what is, and that's what I'm sharing with you. So, once you get your answer, when you look at Moses, when he says, Re'eh Anochi, what do you see? Whatever your individual answer is, now we can move forward. So here comes the next step. The next step being the way to go about it, the way to achieve it, the way to realize it. We always want what's out of our grasp, out of our reach, what we can't have, what seems impossible. It's fantasy because it's not real. And again, we have a certain goal in mind. Sometimes these goals could be far off. These goals could be as far as, let's say, losing weight, making a certain amount of money, building a company, starting a family, learning Hebrew, overcoming loss, or any other obstacle. We've all had these problems in one way or another. Some of us are still going through it. Now, we also all know that it's the initial steps, the first push, that's the most difficult. This is getting started. That's it. You see what you want, right? Your goal, and you see where you are. And then you see the gap in between. And this gap is what scares you. It discourages you, it frustrates you, so much so that you're ready to quit even before you took that first step. Because this is what you look at. Instead of looking at your goal, you look at the gap. The gap is irrelevant. That gap will get smaller and smaller, but it's all up to you. So, what's a real good way to get into the groove? Okay, let's say, again, we'll go with gym references here, okay? You get a coach, you get a trainer. So in this case, our coach, our trainer, the guy who's going to push us, the guy who's going to mentor us is Moses. Now, when you go to the gym and you want to get a trainer for yourself, what do? Who are you going to choose? Are you going to take the slightly overweight individual over there, the guy with the gut? Or are you going to take the guy that looks the way you want to look? Look at me. Stay with me here. So we say to Moses, or rather, what is Moses telling us over here? Hey man, you see me? You want this? Follow me. Look at me. Do you see my spiritual muscles? Moses asks. My spiritual strength, what I'm able to do? Do you see all the glory, the grace, and the blessings that come as part of being me? I'm not just going to leave you hanging. Don't worry about it. I'm going to coach you, encourage you, inspire you. I'm going to chasten you when I need to, and I'm going to be loving on you whenever you deserve it. If you want in on this, if you want to be like me, now remember, he's probably the only man who could get away with saying this, as God deemed him the most humble man alive. So he says, if you want to be like me, then here's the first step. You shall set up judges and law enforcement officials for yourself in all your cities that the Lord your God is giving you for your tribes, and they shall judge the people with righteous judgment. Shoftim v'shotrim titen lecha bechol she'arecha. She'arecha means in the gates of your city. Asher Adonai Elohecha noten lecha leshvatecha v'shaftu et ha'am mishpat tzedek. Now, we're all working on our spiritual muscles at this point. This is what's happening right now. Again, there's resistance, and that's how we grow. So let's break it down the way we normally do. At this point, if you've been following most of the teachings, you should have the understanding that man is a microcosm of God and a microcosm of creation. So in other words, if you want to understand God, you could look at man. If you want to understand creation, look at man. It's all within man, likeness and image in us. We also have two ways to look at it. Now, granted, there are many ways to look at the Torah, the most basic being that there is a physical and a spiritual. This we know by default, but in this verse, I want to speak only in these two following ways, and that is the collective and the individual. Collective and the individual. Now, when you read this, English or even in the Hebrew, because it refers to the tribes and to the peoples, to the nation, you by default focus on the collective, right? This is how that's the first thing that we think about. So let's start with a default setting to give us a solid base before we get to the individual. Who are these judges that the verse is speaking of? Who are these people? Where did this come from that we should place judges and enforcers for ourselves? Now, remember, Deuteronomy is called Mishneh Torah. It's like a baby Torah, if you will. It's a recap of the 3 previous books of their whole time in the wilderness. Now, we can see the point of origin actually in Exodus 18. It came about on the next day that Moses sat down to judge the people. And the people stood before Moses from the morning until the evening. When Moses' father-in-law saw what he was doing to the people, he said, "What is this that you're doing to the people? Why do you sit by yourself while all the people stand before you from morning till evening?" Moses said to his father-in-law, "For the people come to me to seek God." He was their teacher. He was their only source at the time. "If any of them has a case, he comes to me, and I judge between a man and his neighbor, and I make known the statutes of God and his teachings." Moses' father-in-law said to him, "The thing you are doing is not good." Said this dude to Moses, "It's not good, Moshe. Nuh-uh. You will surely wear yourself out, both you and these people who are with you, for the matter is too heavy for you. You cannot do it alone. Now listen to me. I will advise you, and may the Lord be with you. You represent the people before God, and you shall bring the matters to God. And you shall admonish them concerning the statutes and the teachings, and you shall make known to them the way they shall go and the deeds they shall do. But you shall choose out of the entire nation men, listen, of substance, God-fearers, men of truth, who hate monetary gain. And you shall appoint them over Israel, leaders over thousands, leaders over hundreds, leaders over fifties, and leaders over tens. And they shall judge the people at all times. And it shall be that any major matter they shall bring to you, and they themselves shall judge every minor matter, thereby making it easier for you. And they shall bear the burden with you. We call to share each other's burdens, carry each other's burdens, right? If you do this thing, and the Lord commands you, you will be able to survive. And also all this people will come upon their place in peace. If the Lord commands you, we get peace over here. This is significant. Remember what we discussed about peace several weeks ago? It means everything. So, this is the birth right here of the seed of Moses. Yes, we discussed this quite a few times, but this is how it all happened. And the significance of the concept of the seed itself was not given by God. I need you to understand this. It was given by man. And this suggestion, because it was a suggestion, was approved by God. Now, how do we know this? The very next verse, verse 23. If you do this thing and the Lord commands you, you will be able to survive. You will be able to survive. And also all this people will come up in their place in peace. Here he's saying, if God endorses my suggestion, and here's the confirmation in the next verse 24. Moses obeyed his father-in-law, and he did all that he said. But wait, did it not, it didn't really explicitly say that God said it is good or, do what he said or word, right? But that's why we go back to take a look at me. Anochi, look at me. If you can't comprehend God so easily, then at least comprehend Moses if you see God through Moses. And as we know Moses, is he the kind of guy that would do anything without God say so? Hell's to the no, baby. Mouth to mouth, remember, he received the immediate okay on the spot, which turned this suggestion by man, who was a Gentile not 5 minutes ago, comes in. He's a member of the tribe now, Jethro, or actually the father-in-law of Moses. He gives a suggestion, and that becomes a command of God. How could this be? God gave the seed of Moses the authority to judge the people in his stead. But not everyone, again, now listen up, not everyone who calls themselves rabbi has the authority to do anything. The qualifications are men of substance, God-fearers, men of truth who hate monetary gain. So again, look at your rabbi and tell me if they fall into this category. And then I'm going to tell you something else. Even the most kosher and authentic of rabbis, like real rabbis, not pretend rabbis, even they do not have the authority to sit in the seat of Moses. Just because they're a rabbi does not mean that they sit in the seat of Moses. It's only those who are recognized by Klal Israel, by all of Israel. So in this day and age, the Rabbanut in Israel, for better or for worse, that is considered to be the seat of Moses. They're not perfect. In fact, they are far from it. Nevertheless, the scribes and the Pharisees sit in the seat of Moses. Therefore, whatever they tell you to observe, that observe and do. But do not do according to their works, for they say and do not do. Okay, we understand? Great. These are the poskim and the dayanim, the modern day judges, whose authority had been passed along from Mount Sinai until this very day. That's 3,500 years, keeping the word of God alive. And I would strongly warn against any man who says otherwise. I just gave you words from the 5 books of Moses and from the book of Matthew. There's no argument here. Now remember, not every rabbi is a posek or a dayan either. These have very specific jobs. Even the greatest rabbis of the day, whenever they were, who very well could have been on a higher spiritual level than these judges, are still submitted to their rule. This is how it works. So if these titans are, then who are we to say otherwise? Rather, how about learning how this works? Which is what we're doing right here. So fantastic. Welcome. Remember, spiritual muscles, baby. So good on you. Now, our sages say that the reason that this paragraph follows the paragraph dealing with the pilgrimage festivals from last week's Parsha is to tell us that even though the Israelites make 3 pilgrimages annually to Jerusalem, where there are many priests and many Kohanim. Remember, the Kohanim the Kohanim and the Levites they were the ones that taught Torah. They were in Jerusalem. There are plenty of other Torah teachers as well. But the pilgrimages can get instruction from these scholars how to conduct themselves, clearing up many matters about which they entertain doubts. This does not relieve them of the duty to appoint local courts throughout the land. Again, we're not only talking about in Jerusalem, we're talking about in every single city. It says in every city, in your gates. Each city must have such a court. The judges are appointed on the basis of their knowledge of the law. The people called shotrim in our verse are those who ensure that the judge's decisions are carried out. Basically, the shotrim are policemen who apply force when necessary. And by the way, this system right here that we have throughout the Western world is one of the 7 Noahide laws. You have to establish a court system for yourself. So far, for now, well done. The judicial system is divided into 3 levels. There's a court comprising of 71 judges, known as the Sanhedrin. There are courts comprised of 23 judges, and finally there are courts comprised of 3 judges. The court of only 3 judges were instituted for communities numbering fewer than 120 Jews. Our sages have said that a court cannot have fewer than 3 judges in order to enable there to be a majority and a minority, and in order to prevent a tie vote between the judges. The sages deduced all this from the mention of the word Elohim 3 times in Exodus 22:7, Exodus 22:8, and Leviticus 19:15, when courts and judges are mentioned. You see how they do that? They don't make these things up. They take it from the 5 books of Moses. It's where everything comes from. Even though a learned individual may hand down rulings by himself as a biblical law, seeing that the Torah in Leviticus 19:15 wrote, Betzedek tishpot amecha, judge your people fairly, singular. The rabbis amended biblical law not to judge matters single-handedly, unless they did not involve a dispute such as releasing someone from a vow. It is considered arrogant to shoulder the entire burden of justice by oneself, something reserved only for God who is alone and does not need advice. However, the Jerusalem Talmud in Sanhedrin 1:11 points out that even the Lord himself does not make judicial decisions single-handedly, as we know from 1 Kings 22:19. And all the hosts of heaven stood by him. This is Michael when he was discussing this with King Ahab. In fact, you guys recall, I believe we actually learned this very verse when discussing Parshat Korach about the deceiving spirit. And God said, what shall we do? How shall we handle it? Because he's not listening. And many different spirits came forward. And God said, okay, give me your case. Give me your case. Fine, that's a good case. Make it so. The deceiving spirit came forth. So this, again, and this is from the word. So does God do these things by himself or not? He gives honor to his heavenly hosts. We're all together in this at the end of the day. So according to the Talmud, the angels are on the right, voiced arguments in defense of the king, whereas the angels on the left of God voiced arguments supporting the prosecution's case. Although God does not make decisions single-handedly, he does seal the decree by himself. We know this from Daniel 10:21. So now we understand the pshat a little bit better and the basic understanding of why we need this system taken directly from the Word of God. Now, do people still swear on Bibles today when they're in court? In today's world, it seems to be a court of public opinion that can all but condemn a man to death. Now, careful world, okay? If this system collapses, so will you, and we actually see it happening. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Who's your God? Even the Midrash discusses that the judges and the enforcers are one in the same. You can't have one without the other. They're extensions of one another. What good is a judgment if there's no one to enforce it? And what good is an enforcer if no judgment has been made? The example of King David and his general Yoav are given here. David was the judge, and Yoav was his arm. Make it so. You shall not pervert justice. You shall not show favoritism, and you shall not take a bribe, for bribery blinds the eyes of the wise and perverts just words. Need we say more here? Do we not see so much corruption in the judicial system today, especially when it comes to the rich and the powerful? So again, just because you have this system set up, it doesn't make it kosher. You got to live by it as well. It's like the circumcision of the flesh and the circumcision of the heart. On the outside, I may look like a Jew. I have my blood covenant, but am I a Jew from the inside? That's very important to look at. Remember, introspection, reflection, accountability, and responsibility. This is no coincidence that this parsha always falls during this month. That's why I'm getting into all what you would call the boring technical stuff. Don't worry, I got you. But now that we got all the boring technical stuff out of the way, I can speak to you on a slightly deeper level. Now we are going to go diving deep. Take a seat. At least we got a foothold right now. I need you all to know this. Okay, now, there's just one more thing that I'd like to point out regarding the judges in the city gates before we move on, because this is very relevant to many of you out there. And all the people who were in the gate and the elders replied, "We are witnesses. May the Lord make the woman who is entering your house like Rachel and like Leah, both of whom built up the house of Israel, and prosper in Ephratah, and be famous in Bethlehem. And may your house be like the house of Peretz, whom Tamar bore to Judah, with the seed that the Lord will give you from this maiden." Who's the maiden? "And Boaz took Ruth, and she became his wife, and he was intimate with her, and the Lord gave her conception, and she bore a son." Until this very day, we have judges in our city gates. The seed of Moses is the filter to all who want to become Jews. And as I've been teaching you all, once you're in, you're in. You're not known as a convert. You're not any less than any other Jew. To the contrary, you choose this. This is your choice, and that's recognized, which only means that God chose you first. You can bear children, and they will all be the children of Israel. Just like we received from Ruth, the former Moabite, who produced the line of David. Need I say more? Don't ever doubt this, because this is what it is. Okay, so now, we spoke of the collective, right? Now let's get really personal. Why should we get personal? Well, because even though the first verse speaks of the tribes and the peoples, it's written in the single tense. Again, it's the Hebrew. Now there are 5 singularities in the verse. You shall set up judges and law enforcement officials for yourself in all your cities that the Lord your God is giving for you, for your tribes, and they shall judge the people with righteous judgment. Shoftim v'shotrim titen lecha, for you, singular, bechol sha'arecha, singular, in all your gates, asher Adonai Elohecha, that the Lord your God, singular, noten lecha, gives to you, singular, Leshivtecha, to your tribes, singular. So now, what if I told you, because there's a major focus over here. We're talking about the general, the collective, but it's talking you. So what if I told you that each and every one of us has 7 gates to their own being, to their own person? 7. And what is the purpose of the gates if not to filter who or what enters into our domain? For are we not the temple of God? Whether it be in a city or in our mind. Why does the verse say gates and not in the courthouse? Why is it actually at the gate, the border, if you will, as in surrounding your city? What are our gates? 2 eyes, 2 ears, 2 nostrils, 1 mouth. That's 7. Children, judges and officers, you shall set up at your gates. Do we protect our eyes from seeing inappropriate things that we cannot unsee? Do we protect our ears from hearing evil speech? Do we guard our tongue from speaking false truths? What's the nose for? Great question. Did you know that your sense of smell is directly tied to memory? And spiritually, it is the highest of all senses. And we discussed this before. It was God who breathed the breath of life into our nostrils. And it is Messiah who will come and smell Torah on each and every man at the end of days. It was only the sweet smelling incense that caused God to accept the sacrifices. Everything could have been in place, but without the incense, it's right there. Mount Moriah. Mount Moriah was said to have smelt like cinnamon. So the nose, that's for later. So who are these judges and these officers at the gates who were given the authority to serve the people? These were men who guarded their own gates on every single level, stopping evil from entering or exiting. And every single day, my friends, that we do this, we are following the Lord's commandments as given to us through a suggestion by the father-in-law of Moses. Because who else can possibly know what we say, see, or hear, or eat when we're by ourselves, or how we conduct ourselves? Again, even if no one is around. If we don't know what's right and what's wrong, first and foremost, how do we know what to guard or how to guard? And if we understand that, then we understand what comes next. What then shall we say? Is the law sin? Absolutely not. Indeed, I would not have been mindful of sin if not for the law. For I would not have been aware of coveting if the law had not said, do not covet. Because what comes next, in my eyes, I believe sums up the reason for creation itself. I'm saying that part. How are you going to know it if you throw it away? Now here's what comes next. Tzedek, tzedek, tirdof, leman tichyeh, וירשת את הארץ אשר אדוני אלוהיך נותן לך. Justice, justice, you shall pursue, that you may live and possess the land the Lord your God is giving you. And why, oh why, should you pursue justice? That you may live. It's very simple. Okay? And why does it say justice or righteousness twice? Justice and righteousness is pretty much the same thing in Hebrew. So let's talk about it. Why does it say it twice? According to Jewish thought, righteousness is a verb. It's an action of doing, constantly being in a state of being, right? Constantly being in a state of being, as in it's alive, it is life itself. So the light that shines upon us when we receive the Torah, should we become this light by default, we shine it back to its source. It's a constant action or a constant motion, as we discussed in last week's Parsha. I'll just read these lines to catch you all up who weren't here. The letters Aleph, Lamed, Pei, that spell the letter Aleph. The letters that spell the letter Aleph, the first letter of the Hebrew alphabet. If you flip them over, it spells pele, which is miracle or wonder or secret, something supernatural, as in the word niflaot, and hint at the fact that the ability to reattach oneself to the original source that gives one life is something beyond man's innate ability and cannot be achieved without direct divine intervention. The process by which this is achieved is known as tenuah, normally translated as motion, meaning in this context that God sets in motion some part of the word tenuah. So in the simple sense, it says it twice, once for our words and once for our actions. Our sages say that righteousness, righteousness you shall pursue, according to the plain meaning of the text of the Torah, warns by repeating that one must strive to be righteous both in word and in deed. These are the two ways in which one may potentially inflict harm upon both oneself and upon others. Everyone who speaks righteously reflects the fact that his deeds are most likely righteous as well. This is why it behooves every Jew to be both righteous in speech and deed. This sentiment is reflected in Zephaniah 3:13, when he said of the remnant of the people of Israel that they shall do no wrong or speak no falsehood. A deceitful tongue shall not be in their mouths. Alternatively, our verse addresses the people who are subject to litigation and exhorts them to strive for righteousness regardless of whether this will be financially beneficial or harmful to them. This is why the Torah repeats the exhortation. And on the same note, let's take a deeper look now. A Kabbalistic approach based on Nachmanides, the Ramban. The reason for repeating the word tzedek is that the Torah reminds you that righteousness emanates from the emanation tzedek. It promises the judge that if he strives to dispense the kind of justice which reflects the righteousness, he in turn will be the recipient of input from that emanation. Just like we discussed, if you're going to be the light, you're going to get the light because you're shining the light on the light like a mirror. It is something like in Exodus 15:16 where Moses prayed. This is in the Song of Moses after they crossed the sea. Tipol aleihem emata v'fachad. And also, Az yashil Moshe, remember this is how it starts. Then Moses will sing. Not then, as in the end of days, Moses will sing. What is tipol aleihem emata v'fachad? May fear and trepidation fall upon them, the Gentile nations. The letter He at the end of the word emata, ema means fear, not ema. Ema is terror, sorry. Emata, the letter He at the end of that word doesn't necessarily need to be there. It's an allusion to the final letter He in Shem Hashem, in the Yud He Vav He, okay, the Tetragrammaton. The source of this fear, which represents the attributes of justice. Being imbued with such fear of the attribute tzedek is not a threat, but a promise in this instance. It is as if judges who practice righteousness will be rewarded with irat shamayim as a result. You understand? If they practice righteousness, they will understand the true reverence of God. And the beginning of wisdom is the fear of the Lord, the reverence of the Lord. The practice of these mitzvot is the reward within itself, just like Shabbat. What is the reward of Shabbat? It's the keeping Shabbat within itself, in this realm anyway. Now you'll find this approach echoed in the Sefer HaBahir, the Bahir, items 74 and 75, where the author, in commenting on the sequence of Tzedek Tzedek Tirdof, Leman Tichye Ve'arashta, explains righteousness, righteousness you shall pursue, explains that the repetition of the word tzedek reflects what is written in Psalms 18:13, Minoga Negdo, i.e. a repetition of Noga and Gachalei Ish, which are two different forms of intense heat. Gechalim are coals. Noga is supernatural light. It's like a supernova almost. One is weaker than the other, but they go off the reflection of one another. That the first time the word appears, it refers to true righteousness, whereas the second time is like an echo of the original righteousness practiced. It's like the sun and moon Moses, and Joshua. He who strives to perform righteousness will find that it echoes all around him. Now, the reason that we call a convert, a proselyte, who has sought to place himself under kanfei hashchina, the wings, the protective wings of the Shekhinah, of the divine, the reason we call them a ger tzedek, tzedek tirdof, is that he has acquired the trepidation for this attribute of justice, which we normally refer to as irat shamayim, awe of heaven. Do you understand how awesome that is? You acquired that while still not in the mishpacha, but because you wanted to, you received it. It's cool. Our sages continue. Perhaps this point must be emphasized, especially with the ger tzedek, he who converts to Judaism, as he may think that conversion bestows only the welcome acceptance by the attribute of mercy without simultaneously submitting to God as the attribute of justice. By submitting to the attribute, one has embraced Judaism in the full meaning of the word. Now, I didn't plan this to be related to conversion, but this only strengthens the point of what we discussed before regarding Ruth. She pursued righteousness, and as a result, it was righteousness who found her. Straight up Jeremiah 29, and you shall call me and go and pray to me, and I will hearken to you. And you will seek me and find me, for you will seek me with all your heart. And I will be found by you, says the Lord, and I will return your captivity and gather you from all the nations and from all the places where I have driven you, says the Lord, and I will return you to the place whence I exiled you. Not only is he speaking of the physical Jews in exile, but the Jewish souls in the Gentile body, so to speak. And as we also mentioned before, righteousness is not something one can ever attain on their own. Well, we even discussed last week that light can only be achieved through divine intervention, which is why the verse says, righteousness, righteousness, you shall pursue, and not righteousness, righteousness, you shall attain, catch, or achieve. So then we can ask, out of frustration, what's the point? Why? If we're never going to achieve it, then why even bother? Asked the wicked son in Passover, Maha avodah zot lachem. What is this work that you're doing? For what? Why? Can you not see the light? The light. Do you understand the contextual depths of what is being discussed right here? The reason is reason itself. Now, let's go even deeper. In the introduction to the book of creation, Sefer Yetzirah, the white one right there behind me, I believe it was the Ramchal who emphasized the point that every Jew must learn the entire Pardes, the Pshat, the Remez, the Drash, and the Sod. A simple hint demands a secret. Remember that from last week? Now, the reason he stresses this point is because there's no separation between any of the four elements, okay? They are four levels, layers, if you will. But in all actuality, they're all part of the Torah. They're all one. It's all Torah. You cannot understand the secret without understanding the simple, which is where we all start from. The simple is the Hebrew. That's what I'm saying. You can't understand the secret without understanding the simple. But once you get to the secret, through hard work, the pshat, the remez, the drash, the sod, it will illuminate the simple, the pshat, in ways that you couldn't see before, to which you will then better understand the secret, the sod, and so on and so forth. It's cyclical, never-ending, infinite, eternal, the Word of God. And we're in it, so you see how that works. Many Jews were told not to learn Kabbalah, the Sod, the secret, because it's either too deep or too difficult, or it might be misinterpreted. Again, it's all how it's presented. In fact, this was a general understanding even when I was growing up. When we learned any kind of passage in the Talmud in the school, we would skip over certain verses. And why? Because that's Kabbalah. We don't do that. This is how I learned in mainstream modern Orthodox schools. So, what do most people do? They don't even attempt to learn in order to understand. Oh, but the times are changing. They're comfortable learning the pshat, the simple, and maybe some drash here and there. And why is that? Because that has been the general consensus in mainstream Judaism for many, many years. I mean, for centuries. This was one of the reasons that the Hasidut movement began, to stand against the mainstream inside the box thought, which is basically, this is Judaism, this is how it's done, don't ask any questions, and don't think outside the box. That's it. But it never was properly explained, but rather highly discouraged to anyone who wanted to learn deeper thoughts from the Word of God. I mean, just read the Bible. Did anybody from the Bible live like this? Nobody did. Look at the relationships they had with God. That's what I'm talking about. So the Hasidut movement is spiritual by nature and by default. There is no box, especially in terms of how each individual connects to their Creator. Because come on, I mean, why do we do anything? So take a look at art, for instance, okay? My mother just so happens to be, I might be biased, but I'm also not, you'll see. She happens to be the most incredible artist that I know. I have her paintings hanging on my walls. She paints Jerusalem, Tel Aviv, Israel in general. One of my favorite paintings of hers is called Glory. And if you're taking a look at it, it's a view of the old city of Jerusalem from the view of Mount Olives, with the Gate of Mercy to the right side of the painting towards the end. Now there seems to be a rumbling in the sky above. You see that? Now I took one look at this picture and it reminds me of Zechariah 14:4. And on that day his feet shall stand on the Mount of Olives, which is before Jerusalem from the east. That's exactly right there. And the Mount of Olives shall split in the midst thereof towards the east and towards the west, a very great valley. And half the mountain shall move to the north, and half the mountain shall move to the south. Now, as a side note, if you guys didn't know this, so this was written about 2,500 years ago. Zechariah wrote this. And only in the last 50 years or so did they discover a fault line exactly under the Mount of Olives in the exact parameters as written here. 50 years old, science caught up with the Bible. Thanks, science. So, we're just waiting for God to split the mountain. We were taught even as kids that the Messiah will walk, he'll land on the Mount of Olives, the mountain will split, and then he will walk down the valley, and he will enter into Jerusalem through the Gate of Mercy, the Golden Gate. That's why the Arabs, they put a cemetery over there and they blocked off the gate. I mean, if you don't believe in it, then why go through all that trouble? But they know, and it's coming. Especially, we're talking about raising the dead, for goodness sakes. That place is going to be cleared. And behold, anyway, this description. Now I have a beautiful depiction of this as seen through the eyes of my mother hanging on my wall. Well, I have a copy of the original painting on my wall. Very big. Anyway, now, did she take this out of Zechariah? Not necessarily. She herself went up to the top of the Mount of Olives and took hundreds of pictures of the whole area, and then she painted what she saw. But did God not give her eyes to see and a talent to create wonders? And I also happen to know that while she was painting this specific painting, she was listening to music for inspiration as she's listening to songs in Hebrew about the wall and the Gate of Mercy, Sha'ar HaChamim, as tears were streaming down her face. Do you understand? Everything she does, everything she creates has her in it. And when you look at this painting, I mean, you get choked up. And wait till you see it in person. Is God not an artist himself? In the Zohar, in the Kabbalah, he's referred to as such. Does he not form and create, sculpt? Does he not put of himself in all his creation? While his highest creation is man, in the likeness and image of God. Does he not give us our talents? How about music? God is all about song and music. Just look at David. The angels constantly praise God in song. And in the end of days, we will sing a new song to God. Psalms 96. Shiru l'Adonai shir chadash, shiru l'Adonai kol haaretz. Sing to the Lord a new song, sing to the Lord all the earth. Sing to the Lord, bless his name, announce his salvation from day to day. Tell of his glory among nations, among all peoples his wonders. Now, in the same way that God gave the artists of the world the talent to bring the physical to life, the individual then has a choice as to what kind of life they want to instill in their creation. And remember, all artists' creation are a representation of themselves. My parents always reminded me, till this very day, that whenever I am outside in public, whenever I left the house, even as a teenager, even as a punk kid, and yes, I was, that I was not only representing myself, but I was representing my family name, Kreisman. And I would never, till this day, ever want to bring shame upon my father's name or give my mother any grief, God forbid. And again, I've also failed in that, and I'm working on tikkun. So how much more so, he who gives us life, when we walk around in this world, he who gave us breath, he who gave us talent. How do we use said talent? My mother honors God with the talents that he gave her. That's a light shining right back up there, as David and Solomon did, and countless others who sing worship music for the God of Israel. The Torah scribes, the carpenters who build the ark, the sewers who sew the talitot and the tzitzit, the craftsmen who make the shofars. We have a very, very big responsibility. Every time I sit right down here in this chair, I take a deep breath and I have to prepare myself with fear and trembling. Like I go through it I go through it before. I keep thinking, what if I say something wrong? What if, God forbid, I teach something incorrect? What if I teach something that's contrary to the word of God? Again, heaven forbid. I just want you to know, when I'm done recording this, I need a few minutes to come down and to calm down, because there's a weight here currently. Sometimes you can see it on camera when I struggle to breathe, but it's always here. And in a sense, it's a comfort as well, because I know for better or for worse, good or bad, correct or incorrect, I'm not alone. My brethren, let not many of you become teachers, knowing that we shall receive a stricter judgment, for we all stumble in many things. That's a statement, and that's a true statement. One day I'll tell you all how this happened and I actually got to doing this one day. So I'm doing my very best to be as obedient as possible, knowing that we all stumble in many things. So forgive me. So how do we get to that next step, that level where we want to go when we see our goal? How do we proceed towards it? Well, again, one step at a time. Sure, easy to say. But don't give me that, you can't teach old dog new tricks, okay? That's sacrilege. And I know this because plenty of you have given me these things. Some in my personal life too. I don't want to hear it. It's a direct contradiction to everything that we learn in the Torah. Moses learned plenty of new tricks, right? And he was 80. So what's your excuse? And yet still I can hear you guys say, well, that was Moses. There was no one like Moses. Sure. And so I'll say this, only because I quite literally heard these from other people as well. Same thing. This is a conversation that I'm presenting before you. So how about this? I'm going to tell you a little bit about Rabbi Akiva. You hear about the guy? If you've never heard of Rabbi Akiva, please listen up. Rabbi Akiva was born in between 40 and 50 AD. Now, he died between 132 and 135 AD in the Bar Kokhba rebellion. He was tortured to death by the Romans. They used these kind of rake-type Wolverine claws to scrape the skin and flesh and bone off his body, slowly but painfully killing him. He just managed to belt out Shema Yisrael before his soul left his body. That's his death. Just a little bit about it. Now let's focus on his life and who he was. Again, briefly, Rabbi Akiva is one of the most famous sages till this day, and his knowledge and understanding of Torah was considered in the realm of Moses. the way he categorized things. He had a very, very unique mind. Rabbi Akiva single-handedly fought tooth and nail to include the Song of Songs in the Tanakh. The sages who put together the Tanakh did not want to put it in. And that was the last book that was included. His argument was that all the Tanakh was Kodesh, it was holy, while Song of Songs, the Song of Solomon, was Kodesh Kodashim, the holiest of holies. And why? Because it describes the love and yearning between God and his people Israel. And that not only trumps all, but it's the source and power of all creation. And so, thank you, Rabbi Akiva. Now we get the Song of Solomon. Now, I've brought him up every now and again regarding some incredible insight that he brings forth. But now, do you think this great man was born great? No, he was not. In fact, he was nothing more than a poor shepherd. In addition, he did not know a single lick of Torah. Not only that, he didn't know how to read or write at age 40. I'm 40. I feel a little bit better about myself. He couldn't read or write at the age of 40. He didn't have a penny to his name, and he was shepherding somebody else's sheep. Okay, maybe a little bit of Moses in there. This man began his journey with Torah when he was all broke and nothing. His journey began at the age of 40. And within 24 years, he became one of the greatest rabbis in his generation and one of the most famous rabbis of all time. Why did he even begin his journey in the first place? Well, it's because of a girl. But isn't it always the case? But that's a story for another time. What I would like to share with you is a brief story of encouragement from Rabbi Akiva's life. Now, do you think it was easy for him to begin learning Torah at age 40? To read or write at age 40? That's an old dog right there. He was sitting in class next to 5-year-old children. That was humiliating and humbling. They could all read better than him. They could all read. He couldn't. He's got to learn the alphabet. Do you think he didn't get frustrated? Absolutely he did, but he overcame with a little help. And the story goes like this. What was the beginning of Rabbi Akiva? They said that he was 40 years old and had not learned a thing. One time he was standing at the mouth of a well and said, "Who carved this rock?" Because he saw that there was a rock with basically a hole in it. It became like a natural well. They said to him, "The water that consistently falls on it every single day, just one little drop at a time." They said to Akiva, "Akiva, did you not read water wears away stone?" Where's this from? From Job 14:19. He didn't know this because he doesn't know Torah. Immediately, Rabbi Akiva ruled, meaning he came to an understanding. Just as the soft sculpts the hard, the water, the soft sculpts the hard, the rock, words of Torah, which are as hard as iron, will all the more so carve my heart and my mind, which is but flesh and blood. Immediately, he returned to learn Torah. We're talking one drop at a time here. For us, it's one step at a time in the right direction. That's one step closer to our goal, no matter what that goal may be. You may not even see it. You may just look at the attempt or the effort as futile, as a drop of water shatters against a fully formed rock. But when it comes to learning the Word of God, even just one single letter that you learn, you, little old you, has been given the power to create worlds. There will be heartbreak, failure, and frustration. But then ask yourself, as Alfred did Bruce Wayne on his way to becoming Batman, why do we fall? Also referring to the first teaching I posted on the channel, Why Do We Fall, regarding the life of Messiah, son of Joseph. There is success in what might be perceived as failure. You just have to see it. You have to want to see it. Do you know what the Ramchal said in regards to learning the Pardes? What I told you in the beginning, especially the secret? He said that when God comes to judge his children, he will say to each and every one of us, "My son, my daughter, my child, did you learn all of my Torah as I had commanded you to do?" Not just one section. I said, learn the Torah. This is all the Torah. To which we would probably say, I learned only the pshat, maybe some of the drash, but the remez and the sod, the other stuff, it's way out of my league. And that's when God is going to ask us just one single question. Son, did you try? For the command was given, this book of the Torah shall not leave your mouth. You shall meditate or dwell on it day and night, in order that you observe to do all that is written in it. For then will you succeed in all your ways, and then you will prosper. Did I not command you, be strong and have courage? Do not fear and do not be dismayed, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go. It says that you shall dwell on it day and night. Vehagita bo yomam v'layla. It does not say that you shall understand it day and night. For God will give wisdom and understanding to whomever he chooses. If one understands, then he understands. But if one learns and does not understand, the learning still is accredited to him as fulfilling this command. Even if you don't understand the deep secrets of the Torah, the Kabbalah, which most people don't, you are still accredited for learning this. Don't you understand? This you can understand. This is simple. This ain't Kabbalah. This is simplicity. This is pshat. So now, does our verse say righteousness, righteousness you shall achieve? No, it says righteousness, righteousness you shall pursue. Just be strong and very courageous, said the Lord to Joshua, to observe and do in accordance with all of the Torah that Moses my servant has commanded you. Do not stray therefrom to the right or to the left, in order that you succeed wherever you go. You will not understand everything. You will not achieve righteousness on your own. You will struggle. You will run into resistance. You will fail. You will fall. You will break. But none of that matters. Just remember the water on the rock and try again. You know this one? Sing it with me. No, I mean it. Sing it with me. It's a lesson you should heed. Okay? You get it? It's a lesson you should heed. Say it. Thank you. If at first you don't succeed, then your courage should appear, for if you will persevere, you will conquer, never fear. It's as if the guy read the Bible, right? Once or twice, though, you should fail. If you would at last prevail. If we strive, 'tis no disgrace, though we do not win the race. What should you do in this case? If you find your task is hard, time will bring you your reward. All the other folk can do. Why with patience should not you? Only keep this rule in view. Try again. My dear friends, thank you for yet another week and another opportunity to share the word with you. I know this was a long and it was a hard one, but we need to understand that this is for our foundation, and then we build up as we go deeper simultaneously. Let's encourage one another to learn the ways of the Lord, to be kind and mindful of one another, especially during this time of reflection and introspection. So as always, thank you so much for joining me here at the Tent of Abraham. Have a wonderful rest of the week and a Shabbat Shalom.